All right, welcome back to the First Team Fantasy Podcast. Schiff and Derek back here again. In this one, we're kind of just going over a recap of our own like home league
Mm-hmm.
fantasy draft, kind of where players went as compared to where we thought they would go. There's
Yeah.
some definite surprises, and how we like our own teams, how we think they stack up against the rest of the league, so on and so forth.
Yeah, and
So yeah,
it kicked off obviously very normal. You had McCaffrey go one, Tyreek went two, which I mean, in my eyes, it's a toss up between him or CD, whoever you like more. And then we had our first surprise of the draft, which was Bijan going number three, which kind of threw things a bit because Schiff was
to say the
picking,
least.
yeah, Schiff's picking five, and you know, we know the promise he made about
Yeah, if you
Jettas.
watched the previous episode, I planted my flag. I swore that I'd pick Jettas at 5. Now, obviously, this was a world where I never
Mm-hmm.
saw what was about to happen happening. So
Yeah.
after Bijan goes at 3, Brees goes at 4, leaving none other than CD Lamb on the board for me at 5, which I mean,
You just there.
there's no world where I'm going to pass CD. Like I can't let him fall any farther. I
Yeah.
had to pick him. I mean, it's sorry I had to go back on my flag planting, but that was obviously not a
Yeah.
world where I saw myself getting CD at 5.
No, and I mean, you were doing the like basically saying you'd take Jettas over like an Amon Ra, a Bijan.
Yeah, Jamar Chase.
Yeah, and that's but CD Lamb falls to you at five. It's kind of like you
And
just
just to
have
be
to take him.
100% fair, I did my own like wide receiver rankings. I had CD ranked as my wide receiver one.
Mm-hmm.
So him falling to me at the 5th pick, I had no choice but to take him.
Yeah.
Anyways, moving on to Derek's pick at 6th. Yes, we picked back to back.
Yeah, and I played it kind of safe. I went Amon Ra again. I'm super high on Jettas as well. It was one of those where I'm like, we know what we're gonna get from Amon Ra. I had him last season. He finished as a top five wide receiver. I just went the safe route where I could guarantee myself, 15 to 20 points a week that I can just cash in, and I just had to take it.
Yeah, I mean it's an easy pick, full PPR. He's got like the highest, safest floor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, People worry about his ceiling, but when you're getting that 15 to 20 points a week and they play 14 out of 17 games in a dome, you could look up the stats on that with Jared Goff and the Lions, but it's going to be great. Next was another surprise.
Yeah.
Saquon Barkley went at 7, which shocked a lot of us. I mean, I guess, if there's that much faith in the Eagles offense, that, hey, if that's what you want to do. I personally, just considering the fact that we play in a 3 wide receiver, 2 running
Mm-hmm.
back, 1 flex PPR league. So I kind of prefer going wide receiver in the first round unless it was McCaffrey, Bijan, or Brees. But if you have faith that Saquon can finish as the RB1, then it's your team. Ball out.
Yeah. And then, pick number eight, the other in person league that I partake in, went the exact same way for me when I picked eight. You get Jettas at number eight, and that's, I mean, just a great choice in that selection. Like, he's obviously has the talent to be the number one receiver in the NFL. If you tell me he is the number one receiver, like not talking fantasy, it's hard to debate that. It's just his quarterback situation. But again, with him at number eight, we saw what he did. We talked about it, what he did in only 10 games last season. Jettas is the obvious
Yeah.
choice there.
No, yeah. And I mean, I said still like, I feel like with this draft, me like claiming Justin Jefferson as the fantasy MVP, this is the type of thing I was talking about. He falls all the way to the 8th pick. And that's when getting that value at pick 8, a guy who can very easily finish that wide receiver one. Given he has a bit more of a tough path getting there, but I mean the talent is all the way there, and getting that far in the draft, that's kind of why I planted my flag as Justin Jefferson fantasy MVP. But
Yeah.
moving on, uh, AJ Brown goes 9, leaving Jamar Chase all the way to the end of the first round. And given the fact that we drafted so late and this news
Mm-hmm.
looming in the air of whether or not he'll be out there for week one, still hasn't, he's been at practice, but he hasn't practiced.
Yep.
Didn't, participate in training camp. So there's just a lot of questions in the air. Obviously, he didn't fall to the second round, but it was given that his ADP would probably drop a little bit, just given all the questions surrounding him going into the first week. Because that first week is huge. If you don't have your first pick, that really hurts.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously we all hope it ends sooner than later, but if this holdout does last even 2 weeks, 3 weeks into the season, for like, worst case, it could be worse than that. But you even miss your first round pick for a couple weeks and you lose those games, now he's coming back and you're potentially 0-2, 0-3, and already in a
Yeah.
position where it's like, I can't lose many more games. It's tough to take him over an AJ Brown, an Amon Ra, a Jettas, even a Saquon, guys that are out there ready to play right away. And Jamar's going to be a little rusty, but if he does come back and play, that could be an amazing pick at number 10. Like it really
Oh,
could.
yeah, definitely. It's like the value's ridiculous. And then, yeah, we had two running backs go off the board next, Jonathan Taylor and Jameer Gibbs.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing too surprising there. Yeah, I mean, Garrett Wilson falling to where he didn't really shock me that much, just given the two running backs that were there and available,
Yeah.
and given that both of the guys went wide receiver with their first pick, securing one of those, tier, I'd say kind of two-ish guys,
Mm-hmm.
given I view McCaffrey and Brees kind of Bijan as that tier one.
Yeah.
Um, I don't hate that at all.
Yeah. And I mean, after Garrett Wilson goes, and that's a disgusting stack, the guys that we picked as our potential fantasy MVPs, Jettas and Garrett Wilson on the same team. But that's kind of just how it falls when you play a 10 man. It's very likely that that is how it falls. And then after that, Devonte Adams was grabbed to pair up with Saquon Barkley. It fell to me, and I took Maserati Marv. I took the risk, and I kind of played it off. You saw Jetta's rookie season. You saw Jamar's rookie season. Marvin Harrison is as highly touted as these guys coming out of college. He has been. I mean, people were saying he could have left college last year and been the best rookie receiver. So it's one of those. We've been high on Kyler. They don't have too many weapons. Their weapons they do have are extremely young, him and Trey McBride. Other than that, you're looking Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch to take his targets. He's going to get the volume out there. So it just felt like the right pick at the time.
No, yeah, definitely. And had you not picked him, with the way that I've been talking up and looking at Kyler, these past few weeks, I probably would have grabbed him there. But him going off the board, I kind of looked at the running backs that had gone, and you know, my top six were off the board.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to make sure that I got my guy that I had as my RB7. So I took Isaiah Pacheco. Some people saw it as a bit of a reach, but I just don't believe being in the middle of the round, he would have come all the way back to me in the third, given, you know, it. I just didn't want to take that risk. It was like I said, there's times in the draft where if you have your convictions about certain guys, you have to dip a little below ADP to get them sometimes. And that's kind of what I did and went and got Pacheco there. Really wanted a piece of that Chiefs offense and wanted him as my RB1.
Mm-hmm.
So I was happy to get that.
Yeah,
And
and
Puka Nakua, oh yeah.
I was just gonna say,
No, go ahead.
it's tough too because yeah, like who's going around Pacheco? You're looking at a Chris Olave, a Puka Nakua as some of your other like options there, and I mean we've seen Derek Carr, we've seen I forget what the exact, I think it's unrealized air yards or something for Chris Olave because Derek Carr is just not hitting the long ball anymore. It just hasn't been there,
Yeah.
and I just don't see that getting better for him. And then Puka Nakua, you know, there's some leagues I saw him go late first round, and it's just an incredible reach for him. It's going to be hard for him to replicate that with Cooper being fully healthy and the Rams saying that this is Cooper Cup's offense. It's just, I agree with the pick because, again, you either, other than him, those were your other two, maybe Kyron, but we've seen all the reports about Kyron too. Isaiah Pacheco seemed like the best option there.
Yeah, and it's just like a lot of these guys that are going around, this spot. It was Devontae Adams got picked a little earlier, but I knew like Puka, Olave, even Kyron, and even Achan. There's just
Mm-hmm.
a lot more against them than there is for Pacheco.
Yep.
Like the Rams, they hinge on the health of Matt Stafford. And yeah, he's good right now, but the past couple of years have been rocky. Ever since they won that Super Bowl, it's been tough. He's been hurt.
Yeah.
So not wishing that upon him or saying that's going to happen, but it's just we know what it is. We know that there's a lot of mouths to feed and what that success hinges on. Isaiah Pacheco is on the defending Super Bowl champions, who we believe is going to be even better on offense this year.
Yeah.
I just felt like there was less that could go wrong with him outside of injury, which anybody that could happen to.
Yep.
So, not really factoring that in when I looked at him.
Yeah.
But even, Puka going next at the 2-7, that's still a good value because like you said, a lot
Mm-hmm.
of drafts he was going at that like 1-2 turn.
Mm-hmm.
So him falling that far, I mean, that's still a pretty good value. But yeah, it's just what you talked about with him and Olave. I liked some of the receivers that I feel like could still score around them,
Mm-hmm.
that you could still like, I'm not saying Olave's not going to finish in the top 12, but I'm just saying there's other guys that I do believe could finish as wide receiver ones that were going a couple rounds later. I just don't believe that Puka and Olave are those solidified wide receiver ones. They might be, could be putting my foot in my mouth right here, but
I,
that's just why I wanted to go running back in round two.
yeah, I don't think you are either. I mean, he finished as the wide receiver 16 this past season, and he was getting drafted as right around the wide receiver 10 in drafts. It's just, he's getting better for sure, but Derek Carr is not. That offense probably is not. That offensive line is atrocious. So it's just, there's just question marks that you're gonna have.
Yeah.
But after Olave, uh, it came back. The person that took Tyreek second grabbed Kyron Williams for his first running back. And then with the number one pick, and again, these two picks could pop off extremely. If Devon Achane stays healthy and gets the role that people are thinking he's going to get, pairing him with McCaffrey and then grabbing Mike Evans as your wide receiver one is a pretty safe bet to make. We know we don't even have to talk about Mike Evans. We know it. If he stays healthy and on the field, he's going to get you 1,000 yards. He's going to get you the targets. He's going to get around 10 touchdowns. You just know the numbers he's going to put up.
No, yeah, especially just, you know, drafting in the number one spot in a 10 team. Like we said, when you're in a 10-team league, it has its advantages because every team is going to look good. Their starting roster is going to look amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Where it comes in is like, your quarterback and tight end and some of the depth you have.
Yeah.
But starting off with, because one thing I talked about was I didn't necessarily like having Achan as my running back one, but having him as my RB2, now that was a lot more enticing.
Mm-hmm.
And starting off with McCaffrey, Achan, and then Mike Evans as your wide receiver one, like you said, that's,
Yeah.
I mean, just huge because, you're not really taking too much of a risk on Evans outside of age and possible injury.
Mm-hmm.
But like we said, you don't, that's kind of just baked into his ADP at this point where he's being drafted at. Um, yeah, I just think the volume, and we know Baker loves throwing in the ball. He got paid. I think that's a beautiful start to the draft.
Yeah.
The next pick upset me because I was hoping he would fall to me, but Nico Collins went off the board, the second pick of the third round, pairing Reek, Kyron Williams, and Nico Collins. Another, team I like to start off.
Yeah.
And then Drake London, another guy that I was kind of looking at, had he fallen to me in the third round. Didn't really like taking him in the second, but yeah, And that's just tough because I mean, you look at that team to start, and it's Bijan, Olave, and London. While the upside is there,
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot of that. The quarterback play that it's hinging on is it's just like we haven't seen Kirk Cousins play in a while. We're
Mm-hmm.
getting reports that he's good. They could come out and be great. And if he has like, the top two pieces of that Atlanta offense and they're a good team, that's going to be a pretty great team. And bye week is only 1 week. So having three guys out week 12, it is what it is. But it's just with Derek Carr and um, I'm
Kirk.
blanking out. Yeah, Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins is old, coming off. It's just, yeah, you're putting a lot of eggs in the Falcons' basket.
Yeah, the Falcons in the same like putting a lot of eggs in the basket of the NFC South to start off the
It's a
draft,
gross
but it
division.
could go very well.
Yeah, it
Could
could.
go very well. Yeah, and then Derrick Henry, a guy I definitely would have got,
Yeah.
goes a pick before mine. However, left me another opportunity to get a guy that I had talked
Mm-hmm.
up quite a bit, who I'd actually moved up in my rankings to RB8. And that was Josh Jacobs. Talked about his opportunity. Not going to sit here and harp on it too much more. But yeah, I was able to start my draft off getting CeeDee Lamb, Isaiah Pacheco, and Josh Jacobs as my wide receiver one, running back one and two. So I felt very good about that going forward.
Yeah, and then, I mean, looking back on the draft, I may have wanted to grab Cooper Cup here, but when ETN fell to me, I almost felt like, you have him on Raw, you have Marv, let's secure RB1. So I took ETN at the sixth spot, and it felt like a solid start. It's easy to second guess stuff looking back, but again, you just don't know. It was one of those. Obviously, I knew ETN wouldn't have possibly came back to me. I would have been obviously going with someone else as my RB1. But when I looked at the other RBs, I also felt like the drop off a little bit and going forward with one of the other guys as my RB1, maybe, just a little bit sketchy to do. So I grab ETN there. Rashad White goes the next pick. We know how he is in PPR formats. As long as he stays on the field a whole bunch, he's going to get crazy volume out of the backfield. And I really don't see that changing for him. And then Cooper Cup goes. And that the team with the eighth pick, I mean, you start looking pretty dangerous if your team stays healthy and can, live up to potential. Because now he has Jettas, Garrett Wilson, and Cooper Cup, and that's just a deadly trio to
Yeah, it's
start
a hell
off.
of a start. It's one that the both of us would have loved to have. And that's just kind of the thing about being in those middle picks
Mm-hmm.
is you have to take your guys where you're at. You can't really try to play the ADP game too much
Mm-hmm.
when you're playing, especially in an in-person draft, I'd say, because everybody has more of their own tools and whatever. They're not
Yeah.
necessarily going off of the platform ADP. Whereas if you're doing an online draft on Sleeper or ESPN, a lot of people, you're on the clock most of the time, and it gets down to, the last 30, 20 seconds. A lot of people panic pick based on the ADP. That doesn't really happen that much in an in-person draft. And like ours, it's why I got Pacheco and Jacobs where I did, why Derek got, some of the guys he did later. So do I. Because that's what happens. You're in those middle picks,
Mm-hmm.
and there's so many picks in between. Like you don't have that little swing where it's like, okay, I can get him. There's only one pick in between my next pick. You have
Yeah.
to just grab who you want. So
Yeah. No, you do. And I feel like we should disclaimer also Team 9. Honestly, we had kind of just like an emergency at the draft where we had to fill the spot. We had to get someone into the league to take over the team. We got one of our boys in that doesn't, is familiar with sports, has done a lot of over unders, a lot of, parlays and such, but not necessarily the most. Uh,
he hasn't really played fantasy, but
yeah.
it's one thing that we talk about. It's like you look at the lines and they really correlate with like you look at the sleeper over unders, those are it correlates with the projected points. So he has an understanding of who can do what, just
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily in this setting. But as you can see, like with his team,
Yeah.
which Derek will pull up the teams here in a bit, you can see it correlates pretty and I did help him out just a little bit,
And we
but
should have. You know what I mean? We threw him
yeah,
to the
because
fire
we threw
with
him in at the
10 minutes
last
notice.
second.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things like there's one pick later, like in the sixth round, that I had to throw him a bone there.
Yeah, but
It,
so he started with AJ Brown, Jameer Gibbs. He grabs Debo in the third, which is another very solid pick. You know, and a big thing was, especially your first time playing fantasy. One, I feel like you don't necessarily have all of the knowledge to like make those risky picks. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, this guy could be this season. I have a feeling. I've read this and this about him. I'm gonna grab him here. It wasn't too much of that, but just taking players you know are going to perform and seeing where it falls. And I think, yeah, with some help from some of the guys, but his team definitely turned out a pretty solid team. I
Very
can't lie.
nice, I'd say.
Um, and then the 10th pick. So this guy is Jamar and Jonathan Taylor, and he grabs Sam Laporta, the first tight end off the board. And we're high on Sam Laporta. Don't get me wrong. It was just it just felt weird seeing Sam Laporta go so early. And again, he has all the makings to be the tight end one, but I think something we've talked about is you can just get 3 rounds later, even potentially like a 4 or 5 rounds later with someone we'll talk about, someone that can give you around the same production, and you can spend these early picks filling out your running backs, filling out your wide receivers, which kind of thin out quicker than the tight ends do. But he grabbed Sam Laporta and Jalen Waddle on the swing, and I don't mind it at all. Jalen Waddle is another one, though, that, last season he missed 3 games, but his volume was also, his volume was there, I guess. He just wasn't getting as much yards per target or yards per catch. He saw the end zone a couple fewer times. Jalen Waddle, yeah, missed 3 games and finished as the wide receiver 34, which just over some of the guys that are still there, it's another one where, I like the pick. It's the Dolphins, they're explosive, but it just feels like you could get different values. But if you're high on him, you're high on him. And there's nothing wrong with that either.
Yeah, seeing the first tight end off the board at a 310, I was kind of wondering, okay, are the floodgates going to break open? But no, not yet. They stayed. Everyone stayed the course for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, after, and then yeah, like you said, I don't hate the Jalen Waddle pick. There's upside that we know about. We've seen him and Tyreek both finish as top 10 wide receivers,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just we've seen him in a non-contact jersey very recently, and we're getting close to the start of the season, and that's what we've been worried about with him
Yeah.
is injury issues. So not gonna harp on that too much. Um, Next to our boy went James Cook, which
Solid.
I really loved this start.
Mm-hmm.
AJ Brown and Debo Samuel as his first 2 receivers, and then his RB 1 and 2, Jameer Gibbs and James Cook. That's super
It's a high
solid.
upside at the
And
RB position. Really high upside.
oh yeah, definitely. And especially just given the format that we're playing, you want guys that have the possibility to catch passes, and both of those guys definitely offer that.
Mm-hmm.
Next off the board, another great pick to Adrian, a friend of the podcast, who will be on with us a lot this year, probably.
Mm-hmm.
He had a wonderful start with, like we said, Jamar or Justin Jefferson, Garrett Wilson, and Cooper Kupp. So it was coming around to that time. He needed to get his first running back. And, it's crazy because this was a guy that we talked about in the podcast in our mock draft that we did. I think that one I got Rashad White and Alvin Kamara as my RB 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he gets Alvin Kamara as his running back 1, and that just the volume in the pass game that offers is so huge. Just as your RB1, you're going to get that dirty volume catching all those passes. You saw what he did from the time he came back in week 4 of last season. He absolutely dominated in that facet, We know the efficiency on the ground was not there, but when you're playing PPR, it doesn't matter. That's
Yeah.
what you want, and that was a super solid start. I mean, to get Alvin Kamara as his running back one, pairing him with those three receivers to start was huge in my opinion.
Yeah.
And the next was another interesting pick in Joe
Yeah.
Mixon. I mean, everybody has their own convictions about play, and some people construct their teams in different ways the way they want to. You can't really say anybody's wrong or right at the draft
Yeah.
because you never know what's going to happen. There could be trades, there could be injuries, they could be set up very well later down the line. It all depends, but just looking at the players who are available, I personally just, with this team having two running backs already,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have picked my third running back given the fact that, like I said, it is a three, we start three wide receivers. So, yeah, you could start mixing there at your flex, but you're just really limiting yourself as far as who your next two week in, week out starters at the wide receiver position are going to be. Um, but yeah, I mean, it is what it is. And moving forward, I'll let you go ahead and
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, no one was happier with the Joe Mixon pick than me picking next because I thought my guy was going to go at that seventh or at the 4-4 spot, but it let DJ Moore fall to me, which solidified my wide receiver trio of Amon Ra, Marv, and then DJ Moore, and then having ETN as my running back. And like Schiff mentioned, yeah, with a three wide receiver format, you obviously don't want to wait too long for your running backs, but you do kind of want to fill those wide receivers with as much star power as you can while you can. Because once you kind of miss out on those wide receiver ones, the opportunity's gone. And then, I mean, you could start filling in, with some wide receiver twos, some young wide receivers on teams. But if you have those bona fide superstars are going to get that crazy volume, I just feel like you have to take them while they're still there.
no, yeah, definitely. And I mean, one thing with the running back position, it's like you look at it, and a lot of times throughout you see like a lot of guys that started on the waiver wire ending up in the top 24.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot more attrition at the running back position, which makes it a bit harder to, draft running backs higher because you end up a lot more times than not. Your top wide receivers end up playing throughout the season
Yeah,
more than your top running backs.
for sure.
So, I mean, yeah, filling out your wide receiver room earlier is definitely something recommended when you start three of them.
Yeah.
But you picking DJ Moore there, I mean, for me, I was looking at it and guys that I had that I really liked available. Obviously, you could go Josh Allen there. Um, I didn't necessarily want to be the first one to pick a quarterback though, just because I've talked so much about how I
Mm-hmm.
like taking one 3, 4 rounds later.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided this year to take a chance on a rookie who I believe has a ton of upside, a whole bunch of vacated targets.
Yeah.
I went ahead and I got Malik Neighbors as my wide receiver too,
Mm-hmm.
and I got him over Ayuk and Metcalf. But I just really do have a lot of faith in Malik Neighbors, the player. A lot of good things have been said about him. I believe in the talent. He was crazy at LSU. And I mean, he's like a superstar, hard can't guard him type wide receiver that, yeah, it's Daniel Jones, but we've seen him provide some fantasy relevance before. So I just have faith just with all the vacated targets.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And then, of course, I mean, and it was coming, obviously. The first quarterback goes off the board. It's Josh Allen right after that. And as we get further into the draft, and once we kind of pull up the draft board, and as Schiff mentioned, there's no wrong way of constructing your team. Different people
yeah.
have different ideas of what's necessary and what can win them fantasy games. But choosing the biggest thing about choosing a quarterback early is it's going to leave of like maybe one or two spots in your starting lineup looking a little bit weaker compared to if you go a quarterback a bit later. Like, for example, like in all drafts, like Jordan Love's, Dak Prescott's, they've been going really late, but still finishing in the top 5, top 7 area for fantasy seasons. If you can grab guys like that late compared to you get a Josh Allen, but then you're starting a wide receiver that may have finished outside the top 25 or top 30, and now they're in your starting lineup. So it's just, but again, different people, different opinions. Josh Allen probably will still dominate, but finishing as the quarterback one again with all of the vacated weapons, I'm just not completely sure of. But he was the pick. And
Yeah.
after Josh Allen goes his number one target, Stephon Diggs. Again, I have nothing against Stephon Diggs. It's more so just logistically, we've talked about it. Him and Tank Dell, one of them is not going to hold their top 5 fantasy value. There's just no way all 3 of them, plus the addition of Joe Mixon, with Dalton Schultz still at tight end, something's going to have to give a little bit. All these guys are going to have good finishes, but again, you take a Stephon Diggs over guys like DK Metcalf, Brandon Ayuk, it could pay off. Stephon Diggs is crazy talented. It's just a bit more
Yeah,
scary to
and
me.
it's just for kind of the way I look at the Houston offense and the Chicago offense. It's like all of these guys talking about on the Houston offense, you got Nico, Tank Dell, and Stephon. On the Chicago offense, you have DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and
A Dunze.
Roma Dunze. The Houston guys getting drafted a bit higher, so it's like with that kind of like I have less of a problem taking chances on the Chicago guys, but it's one of those things where it's like for all of these guys to be what we want and for them to return on ADP, these offenses and the quarterbacks are going to have to be extremely productive every single game.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're going to have your games where DJ Moore and because there's just a lot of mouths to feed.
Yeah.
And it could be like one of those situations that we've seen like in San Francisco where it's like these guys are going to win you weeks and these guys are going to lose you weeks because the
Yeah.
consistency factor can't be there. There's just unless they're scoring 35 points per game, which is a
Yeah.
possibility, but that's just the factor that I kept in mind when drafting.
Mm-hmm. It's,
But yeah.
I mean, and then after him, we see Devonta Smith go at the 4-9 spot. And I don't hate that pick at all. Devonta Smith, crazy talented. We've talked about with the addition of Saquon. Just kind of, you assume they're going to run the ball even a little bit more than they did last year at DeAndre Swift. We've seen Devonta Smith have games where he's crazy involved and also games where he's not so much involved. We'll just have to see. But again, he's a top of the line wide receiver too. And then
Yeah.
Team 1 has so much upside. Like, it's honestly scary if all these guys stay healthy and perform because he goes Travis Kelsey and then Brandon Ayuk. So now he's looking McCaffrey, Achan, Mike Evans, Brandon Ayuk, and Travis Kelsey. It's a
Oh,
scary first
definitely.
5. It's a
It is.
very
It's
scary.
just very aside from I'd say, Mike Evans has the floor. And so it's just a very volatile lineup.
Mm-hmm.
Like you
It's high
saw Kelsey
risk.
miss some games last year. You said, yeah, it's really high risk, but we play to win. And that's you could see he drafted to win
Yeah.
up to that point through the first 5 rounds.
Yeah.
Um yeah, the next pick another I mean, like we said, there's no real way to I mean, I could see the team 2 went the route of I'm going to pick as many possible top 24 wide receivers
Mm-hmm.
on my roster as I can. We had 7 bench spots, and then later on in the draft, just fill out the lineup with cheap volume at running back, something that we talked about. It was a legitimate option.
Yeah.
I mean, and he picked DK Metcalf here. I do not hate the pick at all.
Mm-hmm.
I personally, if it were me, I probably would have taken Ken Walker in there just to get a little bit more solid of an RB2. a guy who I do believe can finish as an RB1,
Yeah.
but it's fine. Like I said, if you want to take the route of getting cheap volume and figuring it out throughout the season, you could take it.
Mm-hmm.
So right after DK goes Ken Walker. So yeah, I mean, team three starts off with Bijan, Ken Walker as his running back 1 and 2, then Olave, Drake London, Stephon Diggs. Could work out. Is
It
just
could.
some things obviously that some red flags that we had.
Yeah.
And next goes Tank Dell, which we've seen him and Diggs go very close in ADP, giving Team 4 Brees and Henry as RB1 and 2, very strong combination. Josh Allen as QB1, and then Puka and Tank Dell as wide receiver 1 and 2. High risk, a lot of volatility there, but
Yeah.
could be very high reward. Leaving me none other than Michael Pittman in the 5th round as my wide
You
receiver
had to.
three.
There's no question, no
Uh,
explanation. Like that's just that, that's unbelievable.
uh,
It's unbelievable.
I mean, I talked about wanting to go Trey McBride in round 5, but I don't. It was just like, okay, I had Malik Neighbors, I got my upside guy, wide receiver 2, and then it fell perfectly to me, like
Mm-hmm.
a super high floor guy, Michael Pittman as my wide receiver 3. So I have a little bit of volatility there with Neighbors, the super high upside, not really a high ceiling with Pittman, but I get that solid floor every single week.
Yeah.
So
No, absolutely. And I mean, kind of the similar case right after that. I go Amari Cooper, who's my fourth wide receiver, just because I know Amari Cooper, extremely productive, starting to get up there a bit in age. But I mean, I can't believe the only one that has the feeling that this is beginning to feel like Deshaun Watson's make or break year. They gave him this insanely large contract. He hasn't even played that much football. When he has played, it hasn't looked that great.
no.
He has to, like,
Um,
this has to be the year for him. It,
Yeah, and it's like even when he hasn't looked great, Amari Cooper has been good.
yeah,
So I trust Amari Cooper for fantasy football, and yeah, I loved that pick there.
yeah, especially as, a wide receiver four. He's my flex. Um, And then we see T. Higgins go right after, and that's a very solid pick, especially if Jamar's there, T. Higgins is still extremely solid. He's a very high end wide receiver too. If Jamar sits a couple weeks or whatever the case, and he's the wide receiver 1, he's primed to have monster weeks. So I really liked the T. Higgins pick, especially when that's the person in our league that had selected 3 running backs through the first 2 rounds. So to secure T as your wide receiver 2, it was much needed. Um, and then we had the quarterbacks begin to go. The little bit of quarterback train. We had Jalen Hurts, Mahomes, and Lamar go consecutive, the final 3. Which, honestly, it's almost a coin flip for who. Like, if you told me Lamar finished the best out of those 3 fantasy wise, I'd say okay. Same with Mahomes, same with Jalen Hurts. It is what it is. Whoever you want to put your chips into, all 3 of them are viable options. Uh, the 10th
Yeah,
selection, getting Lamar, you pair him with Zay Flowers, you do get a stack. With now Derrick Henry, and again, I really like Zay Flowers. He got Zay Flowers as wide receiver 3. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. He finished as the number 31 PPR wide receiver in his rookie season. He had 108 targets. It's going to come down to if Mark Andrews stays healthy. I think Mark will continue to be that number 1 target, but Zay is by far the number 2, and probably some weeks the number 1 target through the air. So, I mean, it's an extremely solid pick.
no, yeah, definitely.
Just
And
maybe,
you're getting yourself a little stack there. It's just
yeah.
kind of
I just looked at the next pick
difficult.
right after it, and I was like, oh, dang, dude. But then I realized the buys also. I caught myself twice in a row, like, oh, geez.
Uh, yeah, I mean, this is one that I told him. This was where I helped him out at.
Mm-hmm.
When it came around, I was like, you should get Rashi Rice here and
Yeah.
stack him with Patrick Mahomes because that, like, as your wide receiver 3, trust me. I mean, obviously, that's
Mm-hmm.
someone I wanted to come back to me in the 6th round. Was not going to happen. I knew that. And if I could help out a guy in his first year playing a little bit, then, it's nobody wants to be in a league where there's just one team that has no idea what they're doing. So it's like, not saying that it would have been like that at all, but just giving a little advice there to
Yeah,
make sure that he had a super solid start.
for sure. And then
But yeah, oh, yeah,
no,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead.
All right, so next off the board goes James Conner, filling out Adrian's team with an RB2.
Mm-hmm.
He got Jalen Hurts as his quarterback, so giving him Hurts, Kamara, and Connor, two older guys. Like, I mean, we know what we can get out of Connor, pretty much the same thing we can get out of Kamara. It's just injury. We
Mm-hmm.
haven't really seen him play a full season, so that's the question. But it fills it out pretty nicely there. And next starts the tight end run.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Andrews goes, and then I knew you had to do it.
It
I
was.
knew you did, and I didn't. I
We
wasn't
both
mad
came
about it
out.
at all
We both came out.
because I got my guy too.
Yeah.
You get Trey McBride, I get Dalton Kincaid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've talked about how we believe they're going to finish. I think they could easily finish as the top two tight ends.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then next kind of was, in my opinion, someone who you could have waited,
I agree.
I believe.
I agree.
I
100%.
didn't necessarily think Kittle would have gone in the next turn, but Kittle goes because like some people just they see these tight ends going, they think I need to get mine right now, or I'm not going to get a really good value at tight end, which wasn't necessarily the case in our draft at all. And it was kind of the same with quarterback, as we'll see. But yeah, Kittle goes off the board, and then Keenan Allen, Calvin Ridley, someone that I really wanted and liked, but that was Team Two's wide receiver 5. Still not yet having a running back 2.
Mm-hmm.
And just interesting picks between Team 1 and 2 came right here. Team 2 didn't want to get a running back, and Team 1 didn't want to get a receiver. So Team 1 gets David Montgomery and Anthony Richardson at the turn. Team 2 got George Pickens as their wide receiver 6. Then Aaron Jones, Terry McLaurin go, leaving me, my guy, Kyler Murray in the 7th round, like I had been saying I was going to draft. Um, I looked at who didn't have quarterbacks yet, and I saw Derek and Cody both didn't have a quarterback. Oh, sorry, Cody. But just knowing, I mean, no, shout out Cody, our boy. He's
Yeah.
an Arizona guy. I knew in the 7th
Had to
round
do it to him.
if,
Had to.
yeah, and I knew he would get him, and I'd been wanting Kyler all off season, so had to take him there. Derek, you can take over from here. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
kind of.
And then, after that, I still don't have my running back too. I grabbed Zamir White. And he, in my eyes, was one of the last running backs at the time that I knew was going to get insane volume. When Josh Jacobs went down, we've talked about it. On the low side, Zamir White's getting 15 carries every single week, doesn't have much competition. I didn't have to think about that pick too much. Um, After that, and then this is what gets scary about, taking 3 running backs. Xavier Worthy goes, and he's the wide receiver 3 on that team behind Devontae and T. Higgins. Really like Xavier
Yeah, I
Worthy,
just want
but
to talk about. Yeah, I like him, but with the setup of this team, just to I like Xavier Worthy starting on my bench because I can let him progress throughout the season.
mm-hmm,
Right there, I would have preferred to take a Christian Kirk or Chris because you just
the
draft
safety.
guys based on the way your team is set up. The guy you need to start every week, give me Chris Godwin or Christian Kirk. So I have a guy that I know is getting
Yeah.
me points. I know is going to get targets. Just a little thing I wanted to add in real quick. You can
Yeah,
keep going.
no, for sure. And then after Xavier Worthy, we see Najee go to give Adrian his 3rd running back. Did not mind the pick. But then on that swing back, yeah, you get Christian Kirk, Chris Godwin, DeAndre Swift, which is the 10th team in our league, was his running back too. Don't necessarily mind it. But it's one of those, you get DeAndre Swift as your RB2. I would attempt to fill out some more depth, but again, he's going to be on what should be a high-powered offense. Coming back to Team 9, they kind of snag Jaden Reed. He's got a crazy talented wide receiver with a lot of upside. Does have a filled wide receiver room full of other extremely talented young receivers, but I do really like the pick. Deontay Johnson goes right after him, and then Joe Burrow goes. It swings back to me. I take Mondre. Again, really just wanted a definitive lead back. I had 4 receivers. I had my tight end. I only had 2 running backs. I felt like I needed to grab another one to kind of play it safe a little bit, so I grabbed Mondre there. And I think Schiff may have been feeling somewhat in the same boat where he's like, I got my wide receivers, you know.
Yeah, I felt kind of in the same realm. I mean, the next wide receiver I was really looking at happened to be the guy that I got all the way in the next round. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Lad McConkey is kind of cool, but I don't know about Justin Herbert's health. I looked at the running backs, and yeah, it was kind of the same way that you talked about Mondre. If you hadn't had got Mondre there, I would have gotten him with my pick. But Tony Pollard, a guy that I still think can
Yeah,
easily be the running back one for his team. They went
yeah,
out and paid him. And he is a pass catcher. I think, he can have a lot of relevance in Tennessee. I think Tennessee's offense might be a little bit better this year. So I went ahead and got him as my RB3 with Lad McConkey going right after. And then, CJ Stroud falling to round 8, kind of, like we said a little bit, he'd been going kind of as the quarterback 5. And that's where like fives like him and where Anthony Richardson was going. I went ahead and took Kyler over Stroud because of the rushing upside,
yeah.
but Stroud going in round 8, that's okay. That's a
That's a
great
great,
value. That's
yeah,
something I like.
yeah,
You're stacking him with Stephon Diggs. I really do like that there. When you're waiting
yeah,
that long and getting CJ Stroud, I think that was a really good pick.
yeah.
Then team 2 finally gets their RB2 and Raheem Mostert, which is the same bye week as Kyron Williams, but he, like I said, he filled out his depth chart with cheap volume.
Mm-hmm.
Another interesting, thing that we saw here. It's kind of when you wait a really long time, you have to watch the
Mm-hmm.
way that the draft is going, in my opinion, because when you have the guy right next to you taking 5 wide receivers in a row, you can't really wait until the 8th round to get your wide receiver 3. Now, if you have faith in the guy, which hey, he goes and gets Jackson Smith and Jigba, and then Cortland Sutton as his wide receivers 3 and 4.
Yeah.
Could end up working out. Never know. But next, team 2 gets his RB3, Javonte Williams, talking about that cheap volume. He's going to get it. Moving forward goes Austin Eckler, then Zach Moss as team 4's RB3. And then the guy that I really liked at going at this point, probably my favorite wide receiver at this point in the draft, Brian Thomas Jr. I
Mm-hmm.
was really excited to get him here. Have a couple of really super high upside rookie wide receivers that, I want the chance to have those league winners at the end of the season that are popping off.
Yeah.
So that's where I went there. And I really, honestly, based on the value at this point in the draft, your pick, I really did like a lot.
Yeah. And then I go Evan Ingram, even though I had Trey McBride. The thought process was, I had 4 receivers. So already one of them is filling the flex, and whoever's bye week, I put whoever was in the flex into the starting receiver. And Evan Ingram in 2023 outscored every single person available in the draft at this point. He was literally the tight end 2 the season before. So I picked him for one, if I have to, I can throw him at the flex. I don't mind that. And then two, if someone's tight end goes down or doesn't pan out the way they want it to, he can be used for trade bait as well. He just felt like a safe pick this late. I don't normally like going 2 tight ends, especially if you get a tight end early. But again, I got him strictly just for his overall value. Um, and then, I mean, reading off the picks right after that, you have Roma Dunze go right after that. Then you have Kyle Pitts go. Then you have DeAndre Hopkins. I really like DeAndre Hopkins. I thought about that, but with his age and already being a little injured, it just, and the addition of Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd, I figured there's going to be more competition than last year there was for him there. Um, and then to round out the ninth and begin the 10th round, we had Devin Singletary go as Team 10's running back 3. And Jacoby Myers. I like Jacoby Myers a lot that late. He's one that he had a really good season in Las Vegas. and I feel like you can get him very late, and it's one of the safer values, I would say, that late. Like, he's not just gonna bust completely. He should have a decent floor to where if you have an injury or a bye week, you can plug him in for a week or so, and you'll be fine with it. Um, Swinging back, Team 9 gets their third running back. They go Brian Robinson, which is another solid pick. He's going to be the starter there. He got more volume through the air specifically this past season, seeing 43 targets. You bring in Austin Eckler. I don't think
I'm pretty sure,
Eckler is
didn't he
going to.
catch 41 of 43 targets?
He caught 36 for
Uh,
368 yards and four
36 of
touchdowns.
43. That's
Very high
pretty.
percentage.
It's not
So,
41, but
yeah.
41 would be ridiculous.
Yeah, no, it was very safe. And then we see another running back go off the board. We see Tyjae Spears go, and then Jordan Addison. It swings back to me, and this is where I'm swinging for the absolute fence, just because everything I read about Nick Chubb is that he's lifting heavy weights, squatting heavy weights, on his leg. He's sprinting. He's cutting in practice. He's ramping back up to where it seems like he is going to be healthy and not miss half the season. It does seem like there is a high chance that he is ready to go week 5. We'll have to see. But in the 10th round, when I'm looking at what's left, I'm willing to take that chance for the possibility of getting even 80% of what Nick Chubb was. All except 80%. It would just be incredible. So I grab Nick Chubb, and then it goes to Schiff, who I think had another really good pick.
Yeah, and I went ahead and I got Jonathan Brooks here, rookie running back. He's starting the season on the PUP, but
Mm-hmm.
someone that I could just pick and then stash and
Mm-hmm.
see in 4 weeks what's good. I mean, he's my running back 4, but not really. Like I said, I just kind of stashed him. And I mean, looking at the guys left, I could have went Jalen Warren. I, might have, but I was just like, I want to take a chance on another rookie. Maybe when he comes back in week 4, he breaks out. Who knows? Once you get into those double-digit rounds at that point, it's like I'm just taking shots on upside.
Oh yeah.
And rookies and young guys is where I like to do that. Next off the board goes Gus Edwards, a guy who definitely should be the starter in Los Angeles,
Yeah.
so he should get volume to. But it's like just with guys like these, depending on how your lineup's set up, it's like, are you really going? Are they going to break into your lineup?
No.
That's the question.
Yeah.
So next goes Christian Watson, Jerome Ford. With this team, I understand the Jerome Ford because it's the team that went
You need a
wide
guy now.
receiver 5 rounds in a row. So yeah, you need a cheap volume right now. And then team 1 goes another running back with Jalen Warren. I was kind of hoping he'd fall to me in the next round. It was a bit lofty of a hope, but and then he goes Josh Palmer. Rico Dowdle goes off the board next. Was a little upset at that one. Wanted him to fall to
That
me
was a
there,
good
but
pick. That was a
it
good
was a
one.
good pick. I really did like that one. See, and now that's one. It's like the way that he drafted, rounding that out. Rico Dowdle could be one of those
Mm-hmm.
late round draft picks that ends up as a top 24 running back, just being the running back for the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
Now, next goes David Njoku, Keon Coleman. I went ahead, took Chase Brown here. Just the possibility that he ends up being the wide or the running back 1 on a good team. Saw him get 80 receiving yards in a game against the Colts, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty ridiculous. So we've seen him, get it done on the field. Just whether or not he beats out Zach Moss for the job and taking him in the 11th round, I have absolutely no issue with that. And yeah, Derek, you could take from there.
Yeah, and then, looking at who was left, I mainly thought volume. I take Tyler Lockett. He's getting up there in age, obviously. Jackson Smith and Najigba is really, starting to turn on the gas, implement himself into the offense. But Tyler Boyd's another guy. I just feel like his ceiling or his floor is significantly higher than some of these guys that are left. Um, he's just a safe bet of someone, you're dealing with injury, whatever the case. I have to plug him in 1 week. He's my wide receiver 5. So, it'll take a couple things to happen for him to even see the lineup. But he was someone I felt safe with there. So I grabbed him. Team 7 goes Blake Corum, and I don't mind that pick. It's only funny because it's one of those things where how we talk about Kyron, they talk about his returning punts, they'd get Blake Corum, this and that. I also wouldn't be surprised at all if Blake Corum was very irrelevant the entire fantasy season. Like, I genuinely would not be surprised because this is what the Raiders did with Zamir White was we drafted him fairly high, and as long as Josh Jacobs stayed healthy, he just did not see the field for 2 years. So
Yeah.
if Kyron stays extremely healthy, I wouldn't be surprised. Blake Corum could be that good where you just have to get him out on the field in some way, and that could be the case, and it's worth taking in the 11th round. Um, Team 8 grabs Jake Ferguson. I think me and Schiff are both pretty high on him, more so due to just the lack of options in Dallas. Outside of CeeDee Lamb, you have an aging Brandon Cooks, and then you have like a Jalen Tolbert and Keontae Turpin. There just isn't much other share. And then
Yeah.
with the running back not being as solidified as it has been in Dallas in previous years, they're gonna have to air it out. Um, and then Jamison Williams goes, and the 10th team gets Hollywood and Mike Williams on the swing. It comes back. Team 9 gets their tight end, which is Brock Bowers. A bit of a risk, but the Raiders have used Brock Bowers all over the field. We've seen him come out from all different types, from the fullback, from the slot, from the outside. It's just we'll see how they use Brock Bowers, but I don't mind it. It's just out of all the starting tight end options, I would put him probably as like the number 10 choice just because of the uncertainty of it. It swings back. It goes Curtis Samuel and Rashid Shaheed, and then swings back to me. And I finally had to go my quarterback. I just could not wait any longer. It was not worth the risk. And I grabbed Jordan Love, who, again, finished as the QB5 last season. And it just, I mean, I obviously knew, that's going to be my weak spot on my team is my quarterback. But with Jordan Love, we'll see how it plays out. I think he has a high upside. They have a young offense that's only getting better together. So we'll just see. But I didn't mind that pick for where I got it.
Yeah, and next I went ahead and got Romeo Dobbs and
Mm-hmm.
just add another name to my wide receiver room. Could have some really good upside,
He
could be a
could.
really good offense this year. And then went Zeke, Justin Tucker, Dak Prescott finally went in the 12th round, which was insane, but
Mm-hmm.
a wild value to get that late. A guy that I would have got had I not gotten Kyler, but it's how things shake out.
Yeah.
And then Khalil Shakir, Jaden Daniels in the 13th, another guy I really liked. Chuba Hubbard goes next, then Caleb Williams. As getting like Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams as your backup quarterbacks, I don't really hate it as like, just hold them on your bench and maybe down the line, if
Yeah.
they start turning out as a top 10 option, then someone doesn't have a quarterback. They could be trade bait, so on and so forth. But I don't hate the picks this late in the draft, especially the guys going around them. Adam Thielen goes next. I went ahead and got Xavier Leggett, again, just taking chances on rookie upside, looking at guys that are going here and around. Some guys that we've seen on the field before, seen what they could do. It's like I just took chances on guys that we haven't seen out there yet.
And it's probably the best thing to do this once you're this late in the draft. I don't want to say it's like throwing darts at the board, but you can do somewhat informed picks where you're picking high drafted rookies, guys maybe that are on new offenses that are projected to be used a lot more. But when you're getting this deep into the draft, and we added another bench spot to our league, so it was one more draft than we're normally, or one more round than we're normally used to. Yeah, you start just picking guys that you think could potentially have a high upside, whether due to injury or just opportunity, the person in front of them not being, the most solidified starter. Um, I go Darnell Mooney, and then Zach Charbonnet goes Dontavion Wicks, Brandon Cooks. Then Tua finishes out the round, and then TJ Hawkinson. I like that pick. You get him super late. We talk about, this late in the draft, he's a guy you can throw on your IR, add someone to fill that bench spot in the meantime. If TJ Hawkinson comes back and plays football like TJ Hawkinson does, that can be a snipe this late in the draft. We see J.K. Dobbins go. Adrian, which is teammate, grabs Trey Benson, which is a smart pick because he has James Conner. If James Conner does happen to fall, it's another thing you do this late in the draft. You grab handcuffs if you feel you have injury prone running backs. Very smart to do. Then Harrison Butker goes. And again, we're getting late into the draft. I'm looking at who's left. I go ahead and I grab the Cowboys defense just because I know fantasy wise they do have monster weeks. So we're getting late into the draft at this point.
Yeah. No, yeah, I mean definitely. And when you start looking for a defense, you want to look at a defense that you think can get you sacks, turnovers,
Mm-hmm.
um, like the Cowboys did touchdowns last year. But that's one thing that year in and year out, there's going to be a lot of variance. So you don't really know how the defenses are going to score, which
For
is why
sure.
I personally like going defense kicker last 2 rounds.
Yeah.
I have no problem with once it gets to like round 14. And like I said, you're just taking shots at this point. Like, so I went ahead and I got Jalen Wright, a guy
Mm-hmm.
really fast, really good offense, and two kind of injury prone guys ahead of him. He's definitely got a shot.
For sure.
Yeah.
I'd agree with that.
And the next two picks go Niners defense, Browns defense, and Pat Fryermuth goes. Don't hate him if you want to, wait a super long time to get your tight end one. Arthur Smith offenses always target their tight ends quite a bit, and
Mm-hmm.
that is the offensive coordinator of the Steelers. So could have some value on a points per game basis. And then the Jets defense, Dallas Goedert, Jaleel McLaughlin, Dalton Schultz, and Jerry Judy go. Before I pick Adonai Mitchell, again, just this deep in the draft, taking a shot on somebody. And yeah,
And that's kind of where I was at. I grabbed Ty Chandler. He was pretty productive when he got touches last season. Obviously, they bring in Aaron Jones, who's a lot better than Madison, but it's super late in the draft. You know, you're picking guys that you think have high upside that are young. So I go Ty Chandler. Brock Purdy goes after that. Then the Ravens and Dolphins defenses back to back. The round finishes off with Gabe Davis. Brandon Aubrey goes as the third kicker off the board. Evan McPherson follows him. Of course, the Patriots fan goes Jalen Polk. I do think he's very talented. I just thought that was funny. He's another good pick though this late in the draft. Rookie receiver that's shown high upside. I like that
could
pick.
be the wide receiver one on this team.
Yeah, he very well could be. Cole Kmet goes after that. I grab my kicker. I go Jake Elliott, and then it falls back to Shiv for the last two.
Yeah, I went ahead and I got my defense. Just got the Steelers. We know they have T.J. Watt. They have a good defensive line. They're going to get some sacks, cause some disruption,
Yeah.
and I can just leave them in there for the first 9 weeks of the season without really having to worry about that. Daniel Carlson goes after that. Then Jahan Dotson now on the Eagles. Who knows? Then
Mm-hmm.
Jake Moody, Tyler Algier, Greg Zerline, Chiefs defense, Josh Downs, Justin Herbert, which, hey, in the very last round of the draft,
Why not?
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I went ahead and just picked Jason Sanders. Think the Dolphins are going to score a lot of points. They always start fast, so I'll start with a kicker who could potentially get me like 10 points per game through the first like 4 or 5 weeks of the season.
Yeah. And then I finished it off with Braylon Allen in the off chance Brees does get injured. He's a good name to have. Not obviously you get this late. He's not a guy I'm just like he's gonna stay on my roster no matter what. Very well, the first good waiver wire pickup that comes out, he could be the guy that gets axed. But we'll just you pick for upside at this point. The Commanders defense goes. Young Hoku goes after that, and then if you know fantasy football, you know the next pick, which we kind of convinced the new guy in the league. He only had Brock Bowers. We said there's been a lot of hype around this guy. We get him to get Ben Sinnott because
Yeah.
it's a solid pick. It really is for
I
what's
mean,
left of it.
hey, it's like it's better to have the next hot waiver wire pickup already on your team.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be proactive, not reactive. We talk about it a lot, and that's a good way to do it in the last pick of your draft.
Yeah, and then the very last pick is the Buccaneers. I'm gonna throw the board on really quick so everyone can look at it and kind of may form their own opinion of what they think, whose team they like the most. Um,
Yeah.
And if you want, you can go in the comments and you can say me and Shift's team suck if you think they suck. You could say they're amazing if you think they're amazing. But, let us know which teams you like, which teams you don't like, why you like them, why you don't like them. Just whatever thoughts you guys have. But it's crazy how every league plays out so differently. Like you know what I mean? Where people value people is so
Yeah.
different with every group of people you talk to and play with. It is so different every time.
Yeah, no, I mean that's why you see things like Bijan going at the 3 and Saquon going at the 7. You just never really know. All
Mm-hmm.
the mock drafts that you do, in my opinion, mock drafts for me just prepare me for the middle and late rounds, kind
Yep.
of getting an idea because that's when people start like just falling into ADP. Those first 3, 4 rounds, people have had their convictions about players all off season, so people are going to make those reaches and take their guys.
Yeah.
I did, Derek did, we all did. Yeah, that's what makes it fun.
Yeah. But I mean, that is it. Another very solid episode of the First Team Fantasy Podcast. I think our next one will be some previews of our first couple games of the season. So I'm excited to get back to that. We got the Ravens and the Chiefs to kick us off. That's going to be a absolute dogfight. I think that game's going to be honestly, I think it's going to be a little more low scoring than high scoring, but we can talk about that in the preview. I think there's going to be a lot of
No.
defense played in that game. That's just me.
Honestly, I don't really care what happens week 1.
Yeah.
So give me a high scoring game and some Isaiah Pacheco touchdown. Damn it, I don't care. But nah, yeah. And then we have the Eagles and Packers. I'm pretty sure playing in Brazil. So
Oh, yeah, I've been seeing a lot
yeah,
about that. That's going to be a good one.
yeah, that'll be interesting. But yeah, we got the previews coming up. Like Derek said, let us know what you think about our teams, what you guys thought we could have done differently, or what you liked. We will see you guys next time. Come back once again, take more reps with the first team. It's been great.
Yes, sir.